I recently faced my own worst nightmare. The HOA president's son tried to take my SUV by stealing my key signal. Yes, you heard that right. My own vehicle sitting in my driveway almost disappeared in the middle of the night. Not because of a professional thief, not because of some gang of carjackers, but because of an entitled neighbor who thought the rules didn't apply to him. And the worst part? His mother, the HOA president, was the mastermind behind the entire thing. From the very first moment, I knew this wasn't going to be an ordinary neighborhood dispute. This wasn't just about parking tickets, tall grass, or mailbox paint colors. The usual HOA nonsense. No, this was personal. This was about my property, my family's safety, and my right to live without constant harassment. The way it all unfolded was almost like something out of a crime drama. Only this wasn't fiction. At first, I thought my SUV had been targeted by some random car thieves using advanced tech. You've probably heard about it. Devices that can hijack your key fob signal and trick your car into unlocking and starting, all without smashing a window or hot-wiring a thing. And in those first few terrifying seconds, that's exactly what I thought had happened. My heart sank. My mind raced. I could already feel that sickening pit in my stomach. The one you get when you realize something valuable, something you've worked hard for, might be slipping away right in front of you. But then, the truth hit me. This wasn't some stranger. This wasn't some faceless criminal ring. No, this was the HOA president's son. A kid who thought my SUV was his for the taking, because Mommy said so. The kind of arrogance and entitlement you'd expect from someone who grew up being told the world was theirs for free. And the story doesn't stop there, because when I confronted them, when I demanded answers, instead of admitting their guilt, they tried flipping the script. The HOA president, this Karen in power, actually called the police on me, claiming I was the aggressor. She had no idea, of course, that the law was already on my side. She had no idea that I had the state attorney directly involved in this case. What started as a theft turned into a legal showdown, one filled with drama, conflict, and the kind of poetic justice you just don't see every day. But let me start from the beginning. My truck isn't just a vehicle. She's a part of my family, a 1999 Ford F-150, painted in a deep red that still shines when the sunlight hits just right. Her name is Betty, and if you've ever named your car, your bike, or even a favorite pair of boots, then you already understand. When something has been with you through thick and thin, it stops being an object and becomes a companion. Betty isn't just four wheels and an engine. She's a symbol of my hard work, my resilience, and my family's pride. I still remember the first time I laid hands on her. She wasn't in great shape back then. Rust on the edges, paint chipped, engine coughing like an old smoker. Most people would have scrapped her, written her off as a lost cause. But to me, she was potential. I saw what she could be, not what she was. I rolled her into my garage, put on my old work gloves, and made a silent promise. I'm going to bring you back to life. That garage. I can still smell it when I close my eyes. Oil, grease, and the faint clay dust from my wife's pottery bowl that she left on the workbench years ago. It's funny how little things become part of a bigger memory. Every weekend I'd crack the garage door, let in a slice of sunlight, and get to work. Hours turned into days, days into weeks, and slowly, bit by bit, Betty started coming back to life. There's something almost spiritual about rebuilding an engine. It tests your patience, your focus, and your heart. You spend hours hunched over, hands black with grease, swearing under your breath when bolts refuse to turn. But when you finally hear that first clean rumble of the motor, it's like hearing a heartbeat, the heartbeat of something you've saved. I poured myself into Betty. Not just money, though she ate plenty of that too, but time, sweat, and emotion. Every dent repaired was like healing an old wound. Every coat of wax was like polishing a memory. My kids used to sit in the passenger seat while I tested her after repairs, their laughter filling the cab. My wife used to pack sandwiches for me when I worked long nights, her pottery bowl still stained with the sauce from those meals. Betty became the backdrop of our family life. Camping trips, grocery runs, late-night emergency hospital visits, you name it, she was there. That's why when I talk about her, I don't call her it. I call her she. Betty isn't property, she's family. She's my pride, my history, my story on wheels, and yet in the middle of this personal bond, this deep connection, came the HOA president, Karen Spruce. If you've ever dealt with an HOA Karen, you know the type. Perfectly pressed blazer, nose tilted slightly up, walking around like she owns every brick and blade of grass in the neighborhood. She made it her mission to control, to dictate, to decide what was acceptable and what wasn't. The first time she set her eyes on Betty, she wrinkled her nose like she'd just smelled rotten milk. She stood at the edge of my driveway, clipboard in hand, tapping her pen like she was taking notes on some criminal investigation. And then she said it. The first insult that would light the fuse of this entire story. That truck is an eyesore. I'll never forget the way those words came out of her mouth. Cold, dismissive, like Betty was nothing but scrap metal wasting space in her perfect little HOA kingdom. I laughed at first, brushing it off as just another Karen comment. But then she leaned in, voice sharp as glass. Why don't you sell it? I know someone who'd be willing to take it off your hands. And that's when the first alarm bells rang in my head. It wasn't just an insult, it was an offer. She wasn't just commenting on my truck's appearance. She was laying groundwork, testing the waters, seeing if I'd bite. I looked her dead in the eye and said the only words that came naturally, Betty's not for sale. I thought that would be the end of it. A firm no, a clear boundary, and she'd back off. But with Karen's, you and I both know it never ends there. That eyesore comment was more than an insult. It was the foundation of the conflict that would grow, escalate, and eventually explode into one of the craziest battles I've ever had with anyone in my life. But before I take you further into the chaos, I want you to understand this. Betty isn't just a truck. She's a timeline of my life. Every bolt tightened, every oil change, every dent polished out carries a piece of me. And when someone insults that, they're not just insulting a machine, they're insulting me, my family, my story. She's honest. She's reliable. She's mine. The first real trouble started on an otherwise ordinary Saturday afternoon. I was out in my driveway, hose in hand, carefully washing Betty's body after a week of rain had left her coated in mud. The sun was out, the kind of warm day that almost makes you forget you live under the constant thumb of an HOA. But peace doesn't last long when Karen's around. I saw her the moment she came strutting down the sidewalk, clipboard tucked against her chest like a shield, lips pressed into that tight, disapproving line she always wore when she looked at me. But this time she had something new. Her phone out, recording, and then, right there in broad daylight, she dialed 911. She didn't even bother to step away or lower her voice. She wanted me to hear every word. "Yes, hello. I'd like to report." "A hostile neighbor," she said, tone syrupy sweet, like butter wouldn't melt in her mouth. "Yes, he's out here being aggressive over a truck." I froze, water still spraying from the hose. Hostile? Aggressive? I hadn't even spoken to her. I was rinsing dirt off chrome for crying out loud. My jaw clenched, anger simmering, but I kept my voice calm. "Karen, really? You're calling the police because I'm washing my truck?" She glanced at me, then turned her body slightly so the phone camera caught her best side. And then she smiled. The fakest, most self-satisfied smile you could imagine. It was for the police body cam she knew would eventually be rolling. A rehearsed performance. "He's threatening me," she said into the phone, eyes locked on mine. "Yes, please send someone quickly. I swear my blood boiled in that moment." She wasn't just lying, she was setting me up, gaslighting me in real time. She wanted the record to show that I was the problem, that I was the aggressor. Within minutes, a patrol car pulled up. Officer Tim stepped out, the same cop who'd been around the neighborhood before. Young, calm, professional. He looked at me, looked at Karen, and sighed like he already knew what kind of nonsense he'd walked into. "Sir," he said to me, "can you tell me what's going on?" I explained, straight and simple. "I was washing my truck. That's all. She called you saying I was hostile." Karen cut in immediately, voice dripping with false concern. "Officer, I'm just worried for my safety. He gets so defensive about that vehicle. It's not healthy." Tim raised an eyebrow. He didn't buy it, but procedure is procedure. He pulled out his notepad, jotted a few details, and finally handed me a slip. "This is your incident number," he said. "Keep it. If there are any future issues, this will help build a record." At the time, I didn't know how important that little slip of paper would become. But looking back, that incident number was the breadcrumb trail that later saved me. Karen wasn't satisfied, of course. She lingered, arms crossed, smirking like she'd scored a point. I ignored her, focused on Betty. But my wife Deborah could see I was rattled. She came out of the house, wiping her hands on a dish towel, and whispered, "Don't give her the reaction she wants. Let her trip over her own lies." And that's when Deborah added something that shifted the whole perspective. "Tim," she said to the officer, "can you do us a favor? Can you show him that demo you were talking about last month, the relay attack thing?" Tim looked surprised, but nodded. "Yeah, actually, that might help." He walked over to his cruiser, pulled out a small training device, a relay kit used for demonstrations. He explained it in plain English, not police jargon. "Most people think stealing a car means breaking a window or hot wiring wires. Not anymore. With this, all you need is a signal." He gestured toward my SUV. "Your key fob constantly sends out a radio signal. This device captures it. Then a partner standing near your car relays it to the vehicle. The car thinks the real key is nearby and unlocks. You can even start it." I felt my stomach twist. "You're saying they don't need the actual key?" "Exactly," Tim replied. "Two guys can do it in under a minute. One stands near your house door or window to capture the signal from your fob. The other stands by your truck. That's it. Clean, Fast, silent, Deborah crossed her arms. So, all those times Karen lingered near our porch with her phone? Tim nodded gravely. Could be scouting, could be testing, or maybe just intimidation. Either way, it's real. People lose cars like this every day. He pressed a button on the kit, and to my absolute horror, Betty's lights blinked, just like they do when I press the unlock button. My chest tightened. It was only a demo, harmless, but it felt like watching someone pickpocket your wallet right out of your hand. Karen, who had stayed nearby to watch, chuckled under her breath. Maybe you shouldn't be so attached to that thing. It's not as safe as you think. The gall, the smugness. She was practically admitting she knew about this technology, maybe even planned to use it. But Deborah wasn't rattled. She tilted her head, smirked, and clicked her tongue the way she does when she's already 10 steps ahead. "We'll need the pouch tonight," she said to me. And with that one line, I knew she had a plan. That night after the police left, our house transformed. It didn't feel like an ordinary suburban home anymore. It felt like an outpost on the edge of a battlefield. Quiet, tense, but alive with purpose. For weeks, Karen had been escalating her harassment, testing boundaries, trying to make Betty vulnerable. Tonight we were done reacting. Tonight we prepared. The living room became our war room. Deborah cleared the dining table of her pottery tools and spread out notebooks, pens, and a hand-drawn map of our property. Every window, every entry point, every angle of the driveway was sketched in her neat handwriting. Beside her, Phil, our teenage son, scribbled quick calculations about distances and camera coverage. Even Tim, who had dropped by off duty after hearing what happened with the fake 911 call, leaned in like he was back in the academy planning a sting operation. For the first time in this whole ordeal, I felt something shift inside me. We weren't scared anymore. We were focused. Deborah took command like she was born for it. She laid out 3 small boxes on the table: Wi-Fi cameras, motion sensors, and an old laptop she used for editing pottery tutorials. "These are our eyes," she said. "We place them right, we'll have 24/7 coverage." She knew Karen, knew her habits. She doesn't come head-on. She lurks. Side angles, shadows, drive-bys, so we cover the flanks. By midnight, Deborah had mounted cameras under the eaves, hidden behind flower pots, and even stuck one inside the birdhouse facing the driveway. Each feed routed into her laptop, which now glowed with 4 quadrants like a mini security command center. And it wasn't just about catching Karen. It was about educating Phil, too. "Watch this," she told him, adjusting a lens. "If you can see the light, the camera can see you. Always remember, angle is everything." Phil nodded, eyes wide. In that moment, I realized Deborah wasn't just protecting our home. She was passing down knowledge, teaching the next generation how to defend without aggression, how to think 3 steps ahead. Phil wasn't just sitting idle. He'd been tinkering in the garage all evening, sleeves rolled up, face streaked with grease. When he came back inside, he carried something that looked like a bundle of wires and switches. "Dad," he said, half smiling, "I think I've got something." It was an old-school kill switch. Not some fancy modern gadget, just a simple circuit breaker wired into Betty's ignition system. Flip it off, and even if the thieves boosted the key signal, the engine would stay dead. No roar, no escape. I couldn't help but grin. "That's brilliant, son." Phil shrugged, but I saw the pride in his eyes. It's simple, really. Technology can get advanced, but sometimes the best defense is going back to basics. They can hack computers, but they can't hack a cut wire. We installed it together, father and son crouched under the dashboard, flashlight beaming against metal and plastic. My hands guided his, showing him how to route the wires, how to make connections tight and secure. It wasn't just about safety, it was bonding, legacy, the kind of memory you don't forget. Tim insisted on staying. He wasn't on duty, but he didn't trust Karen's antics. People like her escalate when they think they're losing, he said, sipping the coffee Deborah handed him. Better to be ready than sorry. He took the upstairs window facing the street, binoculars in one hand, walkie-talkie in the other. Not a phone. That was deliberate. Deborah had declared the house a digital silence zone for the night. Phones could be hacked, signals intercepted, even jammed. Walkie-talkies were analog, old school, reliable. Tim explained it to Phil like a drill instructor. Phones are conveniences. Radios are lifelines. When everything goes dark, you'll be glad you know how to use these? Phil nodded, gripping his walkie with both hands like it was a weapon. 1 a.m. Everyone had their assignments. Deborah, monitoring the feeds, calling out movements, keeping the digital eyes sharp. Phil, the engineer, ready to flip the kill switch and troubleshoot if needed. Tim, the lookout, scanning the street for any unusual patterns. Me, the anchor, the one who kept calm, made decisions, and reminded everyone why we were doing this. We weren't just a family anymore. We were a tactical unit. Each of us knew our role, trusted the others, and believed in the mission. Protect Betty, protect our home, expose Karen. Before we settled in, Deborah handed me something wrapped in foil. Your keys, she said. They stay in here tonight. I raised an eyebrow, but she explained, Faraday cage. Fancy word for signal blocker. You don't need expensive tech. Foil, metal tin, or a specialized pouch. Anything that cuts the signal. It was such a simple solution, but it hit me like a revelation. How many people lose cars because they don't know something this basic? That's why Deborah insisted I say it out loud. For Phil, for myself, for anyone who'd ever listen. Security isn't about buying gadgets. It's about awareness. We double-checked everything. Cameras recording, radios synced, lights dimmed. Curtains drawn. It almost felt like we were back in some black-and-white war film, a family huddled together, waiting for the night to test their resolve. The house grew quiet. No TV, no music, just the occasional creak of wood or rustle of wind. We moved in whispers, conserving our energy. Tim's voice crackled on the walkie. Street's clear. One car passed, nothing unusual. Deborah tapped her keyboard, adjusting a feed. Camera 3 picking up movement. Just a raccoon. Nothing to worry about. Phil leaned against the wall, eyes darting between the monitor and the window. His usual teenage restlessness had been replaced with focus, responsibility. For once he wasn't glued to his phone or distracted by games. He was present. I sat near the door, hand resting on Betty's spare key like a soldier clutching a rifle. My mind replayed everything Karen had done. The insults, the lies, the fake 911 call, the smug smile during the relay demo. My anger simmered, but beneath it was something stronger. Resolve. We weren't prey anymore. We were ready. Hours crawled by. 2 a.m. came and went. The neighborhood seemed asleep, But our house was alive with vigilance. Every sound felt amplified. The chirp of crickets, the distant bark of a dog, even the hum of Betty's metal cooling under the night air. At one point, Phil whispered, "Do you think they'll really come?" I looked him in the eye. If Karen's as entitled as I think she is, she won't resist. She'll push until someone pushes back. Deborah placed a hand on my arm. Then let her come. We're ready. Around 3:15 a.m., Deborah ran through her checklist one last time. Cameras? Recording kill switch? Engaged? Keys? Shielded radios? Charged. We all exchanged nods. No more words needed. The trap was set. All we needed was for the mice to take the bait. Midnight has a strange way of stretching itself. Seconds feel like minutes. Minutes feel like hours. Every little sound carries the weight of possibility. And that night, when our family sat in silent vigil, our home wasn't just a house anymore. It was a fortress. A fortress under siege, waiting for an intruder that we knew was coming. Deborah had her monitors flickering in the kitchen, the glow painting her face blue and white like some kind of war room general. Phil had his headset snug, crouched low, near the utility panel, hand resting on the manual kill switch he had wired into Betty's fuel system. I stood at the upstairs window, walkie pressed tight to my ear, watching the cul-de-sac with a soldier's stillness. Betty sat under the moonlight, parked proud in the driveway like bait, a queen on her throne, surrounded by shadows, and then nothing. Just silence, long stretches of silence. That's the thing about anticipation. It gnaws at you piece by piece. Your heartbeat becomes a clock you can't silence. The first sound that snapped us to attention wasn't human at all, a crash near the recycling bin. I flinched, heart surging into my throat, but then Deborah's whisper crackled over the walkie. Negative. Raccoon. Large one. We exhaled. Relief mixed with frustration. False alarm. But if you've ever stood guard, you know that false alarms don't ease the nerves. They sharpen them. They remind you just how ready your body is to explode into action, how quickly fear and adrenaline can flood your system. Minutes later, another noise, this time a shape slinking across the fence. Phil tensed. I leaned forward. But no, just the neighbor's black cat slinking through like it owned the world. Deborah murmured, "Copy, cat. Stand down." We almost laughed. Almost. But then came the sound. A car engine cut suddenly like a beast clearing its throat 2 blocks down. Lights off. Tires whispering on asphalt. I leaned forward, straining to see. A shadow of a sedan coasted in, slow as a shark circling prey. Target approaching. I whispered into the walkie. Phil didn't respond. He didn't need to. The sedan eased to the curb across the street. Engine killed. Doors clicked open. Soft, cautious. Then 2 figures slipped out, hunched and moving quick. Deborah's voice in my ear. 2 subjects. 1 male, 1 female. Confirming IDs. Her monitor caught their faces in the dim porch light. Ryan Spruce, the HOA president's son. And beside him, his mother, Karen herself, clutching her phone like a trophy she hadn't won yet. I clenched my teeth so hard my jaw ached. Ryan moved like he'd done this before, casual but efficient. He carried a small box, a signal booster, the same tech the officer had demoed days before. Karen hovered close, stage managing with whispers, her finger stabbing toward Betty like she was pointing at a condemned building. "This is it," Deborah breathed. Ryan knelt near the walkway, set the device down. A faint hum filled the night as he powered it on. Blue light flickered. My stomach turned cold. 20 feet away, I watched, fists clenched. The booster pulsed, catching Betty's fob signal from inside our house, amplifying it, bouncing it. Ryan moved quick, hand on Betty's door handle, and with a sickeningly casual click, the truck unlocked. The sight made my chest collapse inward. That sound, it was intimate, violating, like hearing someone whisper your name in the dark when they shouldn't know it. Ryan slid into the driver's seat. Karen circled, phone raised, like she wanted the whole crime on video, but framed as her evidence, not ours. She murmured, "Start it. Let's see his face when he knows it's gone." Inside, Ryan hit the push start. Betty roared awake, her V8 engine growling like a sleeping lion shaken from slumber. The headlights burst on, spilling white across the driveway. It was like a punch to the gut. My truck, my Betty, snatched right in front of me. Deborah's voice was a knife-edge whisper. "Hold! Hold!" I gripped the walkie so tight it dug into my palm. 20 feet away, Ryan shifted into drive, smug grin spreading across his face. Karen clapped softly, giddy, whispering, "Perfect. Just perfect." But what Ryan didn't know, what Karen could never imagine, was that Betty wasn't just a truck anymore. She was a trap. Phil's finger hovered over the kill switch, his breath steady. My eyes locked on the glowing dash inside the cab. "Now," I whispered. Phil flipped the switch. And just like that, Betty died. Lights off, engine dead. Silence thundered louder than any roar. Ryan slammed the wheel, confused, jabbing the start button again and again. Nothing. He cursed, fumbling. Deborah's camera feed zoomed in. Every angle captured. Ryan's face lit by the ghostly glow of his phone as he pulled it up, typing furiously. Karen hissed, "What's wrong?" "Get it going." Then the message appeared on his screen. "We saw it, crystal clear. Is it done? Do you have it?" My gut twisted with both fury and triumph. That was it. Proof. A smoking gun text. Someone else, maybe Karen's husband, maybe a buyer, was waiting for confirmation. "Evidence secured," Deborah whispered, almost reverent. Ryan tried again, panic now obvious. Karen tugged at his arm, desperate. They had expected this to be easy, clean, silent. Instead, they were trapped, faces recorded, text messages logged, every move captured. And me? I stepped out from the shadows. 20 feet away, calm as stone, walkie still in my hand. I didn't rush, didn't shout. Just let them see me. Let them feel the weight of being caught. Ryan froze, hand still on Betty's wheel. Karen spun, her face pale, then twisted into rage. "You set us up!" she shrieked. Her words echoed down the street, brittle, panicked. But the cameras didn't care about excuses. The microphones didn't care about tone. The truth was already written, pixel by pixel, second by second. Ryan muttered, "We gotta go." He shoved the door, stumbling out, but Betty wasn't going anywhere, and neither were they. Phil emerged from the garage, slow and deliberate, holding his phone high so the camera caught him recording them. Deborah's voice rang through the walkie one last time, calm and certain. Simple version. Box steals the door. My switch kills the fuel. Camera sees the faces. Text proved the plan, and just like that, the trap had sprung. The arrival of the police was quiet and professional. After the trap sprang and the shock settled, the next phase began, turning a dramatic night into an airtight case. The officer who had first come by, Tim, was back on duty within the hour, joined now by a forensics unit and a detective. They didn't storm in like in the movies. They moved with the calm confidence of people who do this all the time, methodical, precise, unemotional. That kind of professionalism changed the tone immediately. This stopped being a neighborhood shouting match and became a proper criminal investigation. Tim greeted us at the door and gave a small, almost impressed smile when he saw Deborah's setup. "You actually did something right here," he said. "You preserved evidence. You documented. That's half the battle." His words were short, but they carried relief. We weren't just lucky. We'd prepared. The detective lowered himself to look at the driveway, taking notes, snapping photos. The forensics techs crouched by Betty's door, dusting for prints and photographing the kill switch wiring. They treated every scrap of footage and every message as potential gold. I remember one of them saying to another with a wry grin, "Victim set the crime scene for us. That's not something investigators say lightly. It meant we'd preserved the right stuff in the right way." Deborah handed over a sealed thumb. Drive containing all the camera feeds, labeled with times and notes. Phil handed Tim the physical switch and showed the schematic he had drawn. I gave the officer the incident number from that first fake 911 call. Every little breadcrumb mattered now. They cataloged everything. Dash cams, ring cams, Deborah's laptop exports, the text screenshots we'd saved, the phone that had the "Is it done?" message. The team worked in silence, efficient and focused, turning our chaotic night into an organized evidentiary chain. Chain of custody forms were filled out. Items were bagged, labeled, and logged. That formality matters. It's what keeps evidence from being dismissed later. Forensics didn't just take photos. They dug deeper. The detective called in a cyber forensics specialist who imaged the phones and devices on the scene. Within a day, they had pulled a full thread of messages showing planning and coordination. The texts were damning, step-by-step exchanges that mapped the plan, timestamps that matched the camera footage, and confirmations from Ryan that the box had worked. Most chilling was a sequence where Karen's tone shifted from manager to director. She sent instructions: where to stand, when to start the device, which angle to record from. The messages were clinical, almost procedural. You could read them like a script for a theft. That level of orchestration changed the charge from a petty neighborhood stunt to conspiracy and attempted theft. When the detective called me later, he was blunt. "We don't usually see this level of planning from neighbors." She coordinated it. The messages were step by step. This isn't a momentary lapse. It's intent. Hearing that felt like justice beginning to take the shape of law, not vengeance. We'd already reached out to the state attorney's office the morning after the incident, partly a precaution, partly because I knew someone who knew someone who knew Alvarez. But what happened next was bigger than any small connection. Alvarez's office assigned a prosecutor to our case within 48 hours. That's not automatic in every neighborhood, but it was the right move, and it signaled seriousness. When the prosecutor arrived at our house, she didn't deliver grandstanding lines. She was pragmatic and reassuring. "You documented everything," she said. "You built a perfect airtight case for us." Those words were a relief, but also a charge. We had to keep being careful, keep letting the system do its work. She explained what would happen next: interviews, evidence review, possible charges, and emphasized that our role now was to cooperate, not escalate. Let the law move. The presence of the state attorney's office changed how the police handled things. Detectives coordinated with prosecutors on the evidence chain. Forensics accelerated their analysis. The prosecutors were already thinking about charges: attempted theft, conspiracy, possibly fraud, depending on how the evidence held up. The fact that messages showed direction and coordination made the case stronger. There's a brutal clarity to what happened next. Evidence is king. All of the careful steps we took, saving camera footage, preserving the phones, writing timelines, keeping incident numbers, made the narrative clear and defensible. We had not reacted in anger. We had not tried to punish anyone. Instead, we documented methodically and handed the full picture to law enforcement. That's what prosecutors need: facts, timestamps, corroboration. The forensics team's timeline matched our video feeds down to the second. Text matched actions. The kill switch proved the intent to steal. Ryan believed he could start and drive away until the switch stopped him. That line of proof allowed the prosecutor to present a coherent case that wasn't about he said, she said, but about a sequence of planned actions and communications. Detectives later told me that a lot of neighborhood disputes fall apart because people don't preserve the scene. "You preserved everything," one detective said. "You gave us a clean narrative. That helps us do our jobs." This investigation also highlighted a lesson I hope viewers take to heart. Don't take the law into your own hands. It's tempting, especially when anger is hot, to act immediately and emotionally. But the prosecutor kept repeating, documented, deliberate, and legal steps protect victims and ensure convictions. If we had confronted Ryan with violence or tried to publicly shame them in ways that broke privacy laws, we would have compromised everything. Instead, our patience and discipline turned a raw moment into a prosecutable case. Law enforcement, when given clear, well-preserved evidence, can do remarkable things. The prosecutor's involvement meant we weren't relying on neighborhood gossip or vigilante justice. We were relying on process, and process, when handled correctly, tends to favor truth. A few days after the forensics report came in, the detective called to update us. His voice was calm but certain. "We've got the full thread," he said. "We've talked to the state attorney. We're moving forward." Then the call I'll never forget. Alvarez himself phoned, not to boast, but to thank us and remind us how to proceed. He said simply and directly, "You documented everything. You built a perfect airtight case for us. Don't post about this. Let us use the evidence. We'll handle the rest." Hearing that from the state attorney felt like validation of everything we'd done right. It was a reminder that when you play by the rules, when you document and cooperate, the justice system can and will respond. The next 48 hours were a strange mix of legal procedure and simmering tension. On the surface, life in the neighborhood looked unchanged. Sprinklers ran in the early morning. Kids biked in cul-de-sacs. Dogs barked at mail carriers. But underneath, everyone knew something had cracked. Rumors buzzed. Doors stayed open a little longer in the evening, people whispering across driveways, trading theories about what happened that night. Karen tried to carry on as though nothing had happened. She even walked her same route with her clipboard, pretending to check fence heights and lawn lengths. But her stride wasn't as confident anymore. People didn't wave like before. Instead, curtains twitched when she passed. Neighbors avoided eye contact. The queen bee of control felt the hive starting to scatter. 2 days later, in what I can only describe as sheer audacity, Karen tried one more desperate move. A flatbed tow truck rumbled into our street at dawn, backup lights flickering. The driver stepped out with paperwork in hand, claiming he had an order to remove an abandoned vehicle. He pointed at Betty, but this driver wasn't malicious, just misled. I asked to see the order. Sloppy photocopy, no signature, wrong plate number. His face changed when I explained the backstory, and when Tim, already briefed, arrived minutes later, the truth clicked. Karen had filed a fraudulent complaint, hoping to leverage HOA authority to mask a theft attempt. The driver, realizing he'd been used, climbed back into his truck. "Lady, I'm not getting wrapped up in this," he muttered, tearing the false form in half. The tow truck rumbled away, leaving Karen on the sidewalk red-faced, sputtering about community standards. It was her last bluff, and it had failed spectacularly. The detectives, meanwhile, weren't finished. Using Ryan's seized phone, they staged a sting operation. One of them posed as Ryan and sent Karen a simple text. "Got it. Where do you want me to take it?" Karen, thinking she was still in control, replied without hesitation. She suggested a location, and even this is the part that stunned me. Promised to handle the title problem. Later, that single message turned her from a meddling neighbor into a would-be trafficker. Then came the final nail. Officer Tim himself called, disguised as a shady buyer. "I hear you've got an SUV for me. 500 cash. Quick pickup. No questions," Karen agreed instantly. Her voice carried no hesitation, no morality. Just greed. That recorded call sealed the deal. By the time the monthly HOA meeting rolled around, the entire neighborhood was buzzing. Karen had insisted she'd still preside as usual, trying to project normalcy. Folding chairs lined the community center. Residents shuffled in, some curious, some skeptical, most tired of the endless drama. But this meeting was different. Midway through, the detective entered with a projector. He politely asked for the floor. Karen protested, of course, insisting this wasn't on the agenda. The detective calmly replied, "It's evidence related to a neighborhood safety matter." Then the lights dimmed, and the videos rolled. The footage played. Ryan slipping into Betty, the kill switch shutting her down, his texts lighting up with instructions, Deborah's cameras showing every angle. Then the audio of Karen herself agreeing to sell what wasn't hers. The room was silent, so silent you could hear the hum of the projector fan. Neighbors shifted uncomfortably, whispering. The HOA board members looked at each other, pale and stunned. Karen sat frozen, lips pressed tight, her earlier bravado evaporating. When the lights came up, the detective's words were simple. "This is an active investigation. Charges are being filed." Karen didn't walk out of that meeting. 2 officers escorted her out in handcuffs, right in front of the very people she had lorded over for years. The sight was surreal. The clipboard queen, wrists shackled, her empire of intimidation collapsing in the span of minutes. Some neighbors gasped. Some shook their heads. A few quietly smiled. Ryan's fate was different. Because he was younger and had cooperated, he was offered diversion, mandatory classes, restitution, community service. Justice with mercy. Deborah even said quietly to me later, maybe this will be the moment he learns something before he becomes her. And perhaps the deepest irony of all, with Karen removed, the HOA board scrambled. Elections were held within weeks. And guess who won by a landslide? Tommy, the quiet, overlooked neighbor who had spent years silently mowing his lawn, never causing trouble. The man Karen used to call invisible. Now he was president. Calm, fair, measured. The neighborhood exhaled in relief. The weeks that followed felt lighter. No more clipboard inspections. No more 911 theatrics. No more paranoia about who might be recording or scheming. People started lingering on porches again, waving freely, chatting in driveways. The shadow Karen had cast over the community was gone. Betty sat in the driveway unbothered, shining in the sun like a trophy of resilience. I found myself washing her slower, savoring the ritual. Neighbors who once avoided looking at her stopped to admire. One man even said, "That truck outlasted Karen, that's poetic." Looking back, the real victory wasn't Karen's downfall. It wasn't even Betty surviving every attempt. The true victory was that we never stooped to her level. We didn't vandalize. We didn't scream or throw punches. We built a wall of patience, preparation, and evidence, and let the law do the heavy lifting. Retaliation feels satisfying in the moment, but destroys your credibility. Documentation wins. Don't let anger write your script. Let discipline and planning guide your steps. It's not about humiliating your enemy. It's about reclaiming your life. Karen thought she owned the neighborhood. She thought she could twist rules, bend power, and control people like chess pieces. But in the end, integrity outlasted arrogance. The night Betty almost got stolen wasn't just about a truck. It was about a family refusing to be bullied, about a community realizing that fear only has power if you give it oxygen, about justice served in the plain, steady way it should be, with evidence, patience, and truth. Today, when I park Betty under the fading orange sky and hear the cicadas sing, there's a peace I don't take for granted. That's everything, and it's worth defending every day. If you want to protect your belongings, start using a signal-blocking pouch, set up cameras, and document everything. And if someone targets you, don't fight alone, use the system. For more informative videos like this, make sure to like the video, share it with your friends, and subscribe to my channel HOA Truth Tales. And don't forget to press the bell icon.